You're listening to XSgaming Podcast, a podcast for gamers by gamers, with your hosts Xander, Skullion, and James Gruesome, bringing you something old, something new, and a little bit of nostalgia too.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome back to another episode of XSgaming Podcast. This is episode 113. We're recording this on January 10th, 2018. This is the first podcast of the new year. I'm your host, Xander Skullion, and join with me is my wonderful co-host, Mr. James Gruesome. What's up, James?
Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope you had a great Christmas. This is right before our last show on Christmas Eve. And like I said, I hope the New Year's doing good. If you live anywhere where there was any of that wintry weather, the big, snow bomb or whatever it was that was dropping in, I hope you're doing nice and warm, kind of like I am today. It was not bad at all. And just hope you're doing great no matter where you are.
Yeah, today was the first day that the sun came out and melted all the snow. Like, we actually don't have any snow now, but yeah, since, last Thursday? I want to say we had that really big snowstorm. I mean, I say that, but it was big for, North Carolina on the coast. It was pretty crazy. And, it wasn't as bad as 2014 when we had that ice storm and I lost power for 2 days. So it wasn't that bad, but, it was really interesting, but I wanted to, of course, open up the show talking about some news. We've had a little bit of news go on, and something really interesting. Nintendo has made history, okay, with the Nintendo Switch. Right now, Nintendo Switch has got the record for the highest selling home console in United States history. Like the fastest selling console. Not highest, but fastest. Because it came out back in March, and it's already sold over around 10 million units. And it's crazy to think about it because the Wii U sold 15 million units its whole lifespan. And the Switch has doubled the lifespan of the Wii U. It's already almost there. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, to definitely, hit a record like that is truly an achievement. Kind of like, Nintendo. It's always that name, we've known our whole lives, but they, a lot of people doubted. They really kind of have risen up from the ashes like a phoenix, because the Wii U, you got to look at overall, was just, it was really just a big failure. No matter how much as many of us might have liked it, enjoyed it, people played it, good games, it still was not up to what we would think of as Nintendo standards. And I mean, for them to come out, break records, it's really amazing. I think it's really cool, and it shows. Most people I know that have the system, really like it. It's done a lot of big things in 2017, and that's one of the good things about 2018. I think is looking forward to what's gonna, come out, what's gonna happen, changes, new things. It's gonna be really cool to be a part of it, and I hope a lot of people got one for Christmas or used some money to get one. Or, of course, tax return season coming up, I think, is going to be another, big boom for them, too. And I really hope they keep going strong. It's just, it's really cool to see Nintendo back in the forefront of the console market. And it really is, it's always been a name, but it's really more of a competitor in that modern console market, which just is, it's awesome.
Yeah, it really shows that a home console doesn't necessarily have to be the most powerful to get the numbers and the users to enjoy it. Because, the Switch, I'll be honest, if the Nintendo Switch wasn't this handheld hybrid console, I don't think it would be nearly as successful. It would probably be a bigger flop than the Wii U. But the fact that it's got that hybrid handheld capability, of course, since it's making so much money, so many third-party developers are just throwing themselves at it. Apparently, it seems to be very, I want to say maybe easy to develop for, because we've got a lot of indie developers left and right making games for the Switch. I've been getting a couple of indie review codes from companies I've never heard of that are making games on the Switch, and it's really been a good 2017 has been a really good year for Nintendo, and 2018's looking like it's about following suit. And speaking of Nintendo in 2018, one of the biggest things on Twitter right now is the news on the Nintendo Direct. And the news is, we don't know. Nintendo has hinted that there was going to be a Nintendo Direct in the beginning of the year, beginning of January. And there's been a lot of like Reddit leaks and people saying, oh, it's going to be on this day. A lot of people were saying that it was going to be on the 11th of January. We haven't heard anything on it. And even Nintendo has been like kind of trolling Twitter with it by sending like pictures of a flaming Chibi Robo being like, are you ready? And we're like, what's going on here? It was hilarious. Like Nintendo did a Chibi Robo on fire, and then Capcom sent Fireman from Mega Man, and then Bethesda, the folks with Doom, did like one of their demons, and then NIA came out of nowhere and was like, what's up, dude? And had like some sort of character of theirs that had fire. So it was just like all these developers were sending characters on fire, and it became this crazy meme in a matter of seconds. And it's just really exciting. It's exciting to see what they're doing. And I've seen some of the quote unquote rumored leaks of the Nintendo Switch games. And of course, some of it looks like stuff that we kind of already know about, which wouldn't surprise me because Nintendo Direct is not always full of surprises, but more of information. One of the things that they were talking about, of course, was new info on the new Yoshi and Kirby game. Also, they were talking about Oculus Traveler, which is now called Oculus Voyage. Octopath Traveler. I'm sorry, I cannot talk today. But yeah, Octopath Voyage. And they were talking about that, and some of the stuff that they were saying that was rumored that was like, oh my gosh, is stuff like Dark Souls, the original Dark Souls getting a remake or remaster on the Switch. And I saw that, and I remember I was showing our friend Ryan from the Casket Creatures, he's been on the show, I showed him, I'm like, dude, imagine if they came out with Dark Souls on the Switch. And he was excited because the thing is like Dark Souls on the Switch would be awesome because of the online, you know, because you can't really play Dark Souls online on the PS3 or Xbox 360 anymore. Either the server's down or it's just a mess, like it's a ghost town, like no one's on it. So it'd be nice to play the original that way. Also, they were talking about Nier Automata being on the Switch, which is nice because I haven't got to play that game yet, so it'd be nice to play it on there. Also, GTA 5 and Final Fantasy 15. And Final Fantasy 15 might have amiibos exclusively for the Switch. Like I said, these are all rumors, but what do you think about that, James? GTA 5 on the Switch.
You know, we've all kind of thought about it, and you know, many of us wondered as far as with L.A. Noire, you know, one that I went out and bought just because I really enjoyed that game, and I've talked to more and more people that never played it. You know, and it's kind of cool to see that these people have a Switch. My brother EJ, Ryan is another one. Neither one of them played it originally. So, you know, they're ones that it's going to bring new life to, new fans. A lot of people thought, you know, is this a test? You know, I heard a lot of the naysayers be like, oh, you know, talking about the price is $50. You know, it's $10 more. You know, it's always an excuse for Rockstar to put a game out and to get bad sales and to justify not putting games out on the Switch, which is completely asinine. Like, why would you not want money? Rockstar is about a quality product, but they're a company and they're about money. And right now, the Switch is money. So, you know, I definitely wanted to, even if they were judging how many people are interested in Rockstar games, because L.A. Noire to me was almost like a little bit of an odd choice. You know, in a sense, like I said, a lot of people kind of slept on it, which, you know, could be a good idea to put it out. But I, you know, bought it. I haven't even played it a whole lot. I tried it out, but, you know, I really, you know, I'll be one of those people that will buy things like to support, you know, if that's what it is, because it was a slightly older title. And, you know, to put it out, I was like, I'm going to get it. You know, I think it plays fine on the Switch, and you know, maybe they're using that as a test. You know, like I don't really think a game like as we think of Red Dead 2 coming out, it's like, oh, you know, I don't know how that would be. Could that even be on the Switch? But a GTA 5, I think I've mentioned before, like I think that could almost be a true example of like what can be done. Even if it's not as powerful as the other systems. I mean, GTA 5 is still, I don't know the sales numbers on that, but it's got to be one of like the hugest games in ever, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody
Yeah.
loves GTA. People still play it. I can only imagine that, it would put new life back into it. There's no telling what kind of new things, as we've seen Resident Evil Revelations, for instance, have a couple extra modes, the Barry, Ghouls and Ghosts inspired games, and I would like to think that they would probably put some extra features on there. And I mean, that, as much as the Switch is kind of just a game changer in itself for Nintendo, having something like GTA 5 is just a game changer to the Switch, just to really show like, man, this is still what can be done on it. It's just pretty amazing.
We need GTA amiibos.
Oh man.
Just imagine, like, you have these GTA 5 amiibos, and it's like, you get a cop amiibo, and when you put it on, the cops don't bother you.
Oh, dude, that would be awesome.
Oh gosh, but yeah, I'm just playing around here, but that would just be hilarious. But yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I always tell people that, if you want something to happen more in gaming, then support it. Try to get the game. I know a lot of people that are like, I'll get the game when it's used. I like it, but I'll just wait for the price to drop. Well, when you do that, GameStop and third-party companies make the money. The original companies don't make any. And, it can discourage them, and be like, what, maybe we don't need to put stuff on there. I mean, that happened a lot with the Wii U with third party. A lot of companies, they put stuff out, and when it wasn't selling too well, it started drying up. And I mean, adding that with the fact that the Wii U was hard to program for, and they tried to rely on that second screen, and they were like, well, got the second screen. What can we do? What can we do to utilize this? And I mean, it was kind of a nightmare with that. But getting off a little bit of Nintendo news and talking about a rumor. And the reason I'm talking about this is just to get on my friend John and Jason, just to get on their nerves, because they've been listening to podcasts, and they're like, if anyone talks about this rumor again, I'm just gonna get mad. So I'm going to talk about it on my podcast, because why not? Okay, so a YouTuber named Dreamcast Guy, he made a video about a supposed rumor about a new Xbox console. Now, the main thing I'm going to be talking about with this is because I don't feel like the source that he was saying, I just cannot believe it, because it's one of those moments. You remember like when you'd had that friend that his uncle worked for a company and he told you something, but that was just about it. That was pretty much how that video was. He was like, I know someone who works at Microsoft, and they said that, they're wanting the new Xbox to come out in 2020, and they're going to be advertising it in 2019. And I mean, that's all it was. There was no actual source. But one of the things that we were kind of discussing with that, and I'll ask you both these questions, James, is one, is it too early for a new Xbox? And two, I want to hear maybe your thoughts on the possibility that the future consoles may be integrative consoles.
I mean, is it too early for them to be working and developing on one? No. Is it too early to mention it? Yes. These are still new. For instance, I got my PlayStation. I've only had my PlayStation 4, a little over like a year. So it's still really new to me. I mean, there's still great games coming out. We mentioned before, neither of us have the Xbox One X, but everybody we know that has it is really digging it. And with that just coming out, to mention, the upgrade they had before with the S, and then now, this one, they've already had enough upgrades and such to last a lifetime, almost as with the PS4 too. I think like we're about that phase where we're done with the upgrades of those systems, but to me they still have a lot of life. But then again too, me and you are older gamers in the sense to where, either we're used to consoles being around for a long time, or we kind of expect them to, because we paid, a lot of money. in a sense. Even, you pay $300 for a system. To me, like us, like, oh man, I expect that to last a long time. Granted, phones seem to cost like way more, and they seem to kind of go out of style or need to upgrade way quicker. I don't know if it's a gaming company trying to, without they say with a lot of the millennials and stuff, and not to do a knock on the younger people, but a lot of them expect newer, or so is said, newer, better, faster, quicker. Now, whether we're just waiting, it's like, hey, there's still great things coming on here. There's still so much more. And what exactly do you mean with the with the integrated thing?
Well, one of the things that everyone's wondering is the fact that maybe it's not going to be so much of a new console like an Xbox One 2, but maybe it's a upgraded console, and that's what happens. Kind of like, because, okay, the Xbox One came out 2013. Then you had the Xbox One S, and then about a year later, I want to say, you have the Xbox One X. And they're wondering if, instead of a whole new console coming out, if maybe like an upgraded console comes out that has more RAM, has more features, and, every 2 or 3 years, you can either have that old console, the core console, and you can still play those same games, or if you want to get another upgradable console, like say that a console that does 4K, has more frames, and has more RAM, boom, you can get that one. And that was kind of something that everyone's been kind of talking about, and I'm kind of 50-50 on that. Like, does that give you a little more an idea about your opinions on something like that?
Yeah, no, because we've kind of discussed that before, as far as like both systems, come to a point where they're just a little bit more upgradable. I don't really mind that, I like the option if you can do some type of upgrade, as far as, the systems that each have these features, though, it's still almost kind of forcing you to buy one, because I think with the games, we have these games, but at some point, if you upgrade the system enough, will certain games still work on the older one? We could kind of use the new 3DS, which was not really successful, I would think. I mean, people, maybe if you're new to getting the 3DS, that you will get a new 3DS, which is also just confusing with the name, which Nintendo does sometimes. Whereas if you've already had one, you don't feel the need to. Like, I never upgraded. I still have my 3DS. I like the 2DSs, and I think some of those have the ability to play the new 3DS games. I think like one of the Xenoblades and things like that. They didn't make too many system specific ones for that, just because I don't think it did too good. And I just kind of wonder when it hits that point of, can the game still go on the older system? It's just It's really kind of like a gray area. I'm kind of with you on that 50-50, because there's still just lots of gray areas. I don't want to be able to play the game but just have it be like super slow and terrible. Or let's say maybe you could have the game, but be like, if you're on the older system, maybe you can't play online with it. If it's something like that, that's not so bad. But if it just kind of disables the actual gameplay, makes it lesser, to like how I said, it kind of, maybe still forces you into upgrading. And funny when you mentioned too, as far as 2013 with those systems coming out, and as I mentioned, like, it's too early to talk about that. I mean, man, dude, that's already 5 years. So honestly, maybe it's not too early. I'm an old man, so it's like, some days time goes really fast for me. Sometimes it goes slow. That's 5 years ago. Yeah. Which is kind of hitting that lifespan of a system of what some people consider. With me still being kind of new to, that newer generation of systems, I'm still hanging in there like, oh man, but other people might be waiting on, and maybe that next system that comes out will be that one that is a bit more upgradable, and it's kind of exciting, and it's kind of, the old man in me is kind of like, like yelling at the clouds, and then the other part is, some of this could be cool. It's at the end, it's just kind of interesting to see where it goes. I'm not really I'm really happy with my PS4 Pro and my Switch at the moment. Definitely not looking forward to, another one. It just kind of depends on, what they offer and what's there. It's just kind of, it's that new year and just seeing like what kind of new crap is going to come up.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing is I just don't want too much hardware out there because I mean, like some people have said that, integrative consoles would be great for casuals because then, they could be like, oh, they have more options of things they could buy. If they just want to buy the core, that's fine. If the tech guy wants to get the latest one, that's fine too. And they can all play the same games. My only problem is I don't want to get to the point where there's so much hardware that companies start losing money because they keep on putting out. After a while, people are like, why do I want to buy this? Like, why do I want to get this? And the problem is going back to cell phones, because a lot of people compare it to cell phones. People buy a new cell phone. Some people buy a new cell phone every year. Or they just trade in their old cell phone, they upgrade and get the new iPhone that comes out. But the thing is it's been proven. Apple actually just recently got in trouble for it. Apple has been proven that they will gimp their older phones and make them purposely sluggish. And I remember when I had my iPhone 4, I didn't have an iPhone 4S, I just had a 4. And I remember the iOS advanced so much that I couldn't update my iPhone anymore and look up something like Wells Fargo. I couldn't look up my bank account because the app was no longer taking that version of iOS that I was having, and I couldn't upgrade it because my phone was too old. That's where I would get kind of worried that the companies would get to the point where they're like, you know what, we're not selling enough of this like new console, so let's make our customers buy this new console by making that core console that they're holding on to. Let's just make it slower. Let's make the games not work as well. It's not as good as this one, and boom, you're kind of forced to, buy another $500 console.
Yeah, it's like they're throwing these things at us. Phones, very expensive. I did some kind of payment plan built into my bill. I don't know. I do not. I'm not ashamed to say I don't know how much I owe on this thing. I don't know how long I'm paying for it. I just know that day I needed a phone, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. I look at things like confusion. We can talk about the Wii U names being confusing. What happens, when you have PS4, PS4 Pro, you got your Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox One, whatever they're at. I mean, there's already 2 to 3 versions of our modern consoles out there. And lots of times if you have parents going out and getting these, and I mean, granted, a lot of parents are sometimes can be like my age even, and we kind of know what's going on, and a lot of this stuff is even confusing for me at times. And that's like I mentioned earlier with that whole gray area. You mentioned as far as the phone upgrades, I was reading too where they said with one of the upgrades that you might not be able to – I don't know how many people still play Pokemon Go. I mean, we know it was really huge for a moment. Some upgrades on the iPhone are maybe you're not going to be able to even play that anymore.
Yep.
I don't. When the thing comes up to, do you want to update? Dude, I hit no as long as possible until I accidentally hit upgrade later, and I'm like, shit. Because honestly, I don't like updating stuff, man. I get used to the way things are. I can bring the fact I'm older. That could be part of it. I don't mind. I get used to the way things are on my phone, how they're set up, and then something changes, and it's just it's not always something I want. And sometimes it's better. The last upgrade, as far as my iTunes and things like that, was really amazing to the fact to where my phone, if it sometimes with my battery issue I was telling you about earlier happens, if my phone cuts off, I can go back into iTunes, and it actually, even if my phone cuts off, I can go back to the podcast I was listening to, because that's a good chunk of what I use my phone for and why I freak out when it has problems, because what am I going to listen to at work? I have to have this to listen to shit at work. That's my attitude. But it'll pick up even when it cuts off right where it cut off in the podcast. So my last update, as much as I tried to fight it off, it actually was a good thing, and that kind of opened me up a little bit. But still, with this last update, and especially with Here and Now, how, like you said, they admitted, like, they slug stuff up. And I was borderline thinking, yesterday, I was like, man, I need to get a new battery, but I'm like, am I going to need to get a phone? Like, I need to call and see, like I was saying earlier, like, how much do I owe on this phone? Is it paid for? Because it's something, like, I might have to look at, and these phones, going out and buying them, you can, get them with a plan and things like that. But if you just get, like, an iPhone, like, standard, I mean, damn, what are these things, like, $800,000?
Yeah, they're not cheap.
That to me is, and I've blown some money on, like, stupid stuff, but I mean, my God, unless I'm, putting a down payment on a car with an insurance check I got for, like, wrecking my shit, like, I don't have, like, just $1,000. Like, that's still, like, a huge amount of money, to me. And I think a lot of people, sometimes they don't necessarily think about that. Not saying, like, necessarily younger generation, but sometimes I don't know if they're paying for their phones. Probably not. It still be the parents. And I mean, something like that is just a huge amount of money, to where we think, like, oh God, $500 for a console, and we wait till it's $300, and that's still a lot of money to us. When this damn phone, and granted, as much as we use it, maybe in the long run, it's worth it. I don't know, but it's just like, that's still just a huge amount of money, Just as far as system upgrades and phones, man, we're just dealing with these. That's just a future, man. It just all just seems like it's going to cost us just way more. It's brutal.
And speaking of brutal, what we're going to do, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, since this is episode 113, we're going to be talking about some of our unlucky moments in video games, not just from us and the industry itself, but from you guys as well, off the Facebook group page community. Anyway, guys, sit back, relax, and we'll be right back. And we are back, guys, and yes, this is episode 113, and I was like, man, 13 is kind of an unlucky number, so let's talk about some unlucky moments. Now, where should we start, James? Should we start with the contributors to the group page? Should we start with personal stories, or talk a little bit about the industry? Because I got about 3 stories of the video game industry.
I'm gonna go ahead and start off. I'll jump on it. And actually, I was telling you earlier, I was having a little bit of trouble thinking of some things, and I just had a flashback. As horrible as this is, I remember as a kid in my neighborhood, had a good friend of mine lived a few blocks away. I'd walk to his house, and I had one of those nice Nintendo, kind of looked like a gator skin, leather Nintendo case. And I'd always carry my case over to his house. And I remember one time I was either walking to his house or from it, and ran into this other kid in the neighborhood, a little bit older kid, but we just started talking. I mean, hung out for 30 minutes walking around. He used to go to putt-putt too, just hanging out. And I remember starting to go home, and I was much younger then, like 13. And at one point we were looking at my games. I remember, my case shifted over to this other kid. He was looking at me. We're walking home towards my house, and he had my game case.
Oh no!
And as I went to say, yeah, man, I gotta go home, and I went to take my case, he was like, "Nah, I'm gonna take your case."
Oh
and he's
shit!
Like, let go. Yeah, this is some fucking traumatic shit we're about to go into. He's like, "Let go, or I'll fucking punch you." And like, me a few years later, that wouldn't have happened. But, me then, I was just like, what? It was kind of shocking. Like, what the fuck? It's kind of like when you lose your innocence as a child, and it's like, shit, I just let go. And he ran off. Come to find out, I ended up talking to my neighbor about it. And she was kind of a real tough kid. She actually knew who this person was. And she was like, hey, if you want, I'll offer him some putt-putt tokens. And she's like, you can check out and see if it's him. Because she was really cool. I still know her. Stacy, still an awesome chick. Come to find out, ended up finding out, who this kid was, and man, I ended up going to court.
Oh wow!
Going over to his house with my dad and mentioning this black case. And I remember his little brother was there, and he's like, "I saw a black case under your bed." He's like, "No, you didn't. Shut up." Dude, it ended up going to court. Now, come to find out, this was a bad kid. In a sense, I look at the sacrifice of losing my games, and I went to court and testified against him. This was a kid that he fucking beat a deaf kid with a brick in the head for some shoes.
Oh my god!
I heard from another friend of mine from the neighborhood. We became later on. He heard he possibly raped a girl. This was a legitimately bad kid, and I was one of the only people to actually go to court and testify against him.
Wow.
And I remember when he was supposed to be getting, anytime he was supposed to be coming back, the, parole guy or whatever was supposed to call and let me know. I remember a friend of mine telling me one time he'd come back in and said he was looking for me. Now, I really don't know if this friend was bullshitting with me, which that would have been a really kind of foul thing to bullshit about. I do remember one time, I thought he was at my school one time, and I remember talking to somebody, and I was like, I'm like, man, if you kick somebody in the throat, can you kill? I was legitimately thinking this was gonna be a life or death option for me if I ran into this dude, which is kind of scary. Looking back, it's the part of me is man, I wouldn't let go of that game case. And, part of me was I sent him away for a while, and it was just man, that was a crazy thing that I just thought of, just right now. It was definitely an unlucky moment in gaming history for James right there.
Yeah, I was thinking about some of my unlucky moments, and man, you fucking topped mine. Shit. I got a couple actually. I'll start with one of my earliest unlucky moments, and that was when I was in fourth grade. A guy I knew named Matt, and I still know Matt today. I run into him every once in a while, and me and him talk and stuff. He's still really big into games. As a matter of fact, he was he bought me my first Nintendo Switch game because I ran into him at GameStop, and it's when I was going through all the shit that I was going through in the early of the year, and he saw it, and I was like, yeah, my friend Amanda gave me a Nintendo Switch, and he was like, and he saw that I was buying Binding of Isaac, and he was like, dude, I'll buy this for you. You're going through a lot, and you're a good friend of mine. Even though him and I don't talk often, we're still really good friends. But when we were in fourth grade, Matt had everything. He was that kid who had everything. The kid had TurboGrafx. The kid had a Neo Geo. I mean, he just had everything. And I remember one time I just had this novel idea, this epiphany. That I asked Matt one day. I was like, yeah, Matt, if you, have any games that you don't want anymore, can I have them? Just the words he could say is no, and Matt, being the cool dude he is, obviously, was like, sure. And, I thought he was just going to give me, a couple of games here and there, but no, this kid started bringing me freaking shoe boxes of Super Nintendo games. And I mean, they weren't all good Super Nintendo games, but there were a lot more than I've ever owned at that time.
And we weren't picky back then either.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, Last Action Hero, okay. Even though I absolutely hate that game. But, like he was giving me all these games and Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Sega Genesis, all that shit. I mean, I was bringing this stuff home. My mom was like getting worried. She was like, "Are you sure it's okay for to get all these games?" I'm like, "No, it's fine. I already talked to Matt. He said it's cool. I can have them." And she's like, "Okay," And I remember one time I got sick that year, and I was out of school for like a week. I had like a flu or bug or something. So my mom gets a call from my teacher, and I'm thinking it's probably the teacher like filling my mom in on what kind of makeup work you got to do. But no, Matt's mom found out that I had all these video games, and I had to return all the games back. And then there was a couple times we traded games, so we had to like try to help the parents realize which games were ours and which game was theirs. And me and Matt knew, and we were trying to communicate. Matt felt terrible that it even happened. He thought I wasn't even going to be his friend anymore. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm still your friend. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this was a good ride while it lasted, buddy. So I mean, like that was a really unlucky moment in that aspect. A much more darker unlucky moment would have to be when I had my 3DS stolen at work. And even now having the Nintendo Switch, I have a carrying case for my Nintendo Switch, and I could take it anywhere I want to go. But since I had my 3DS stolen from me at work, I'm still kind of like weird about taking my Switch out. Like I still mostly keep it with me at the house. I don't really go places and flash my Switch everywhere because it's one of those things like I lose my Switch, I won't be able to get another one back. And it was weird because I remember it was around the time that we first started doing our podcast is when my 3DS was stolen. And I remember you and I were talking about 3DS because you had gotten the 3DS XL. And I was like, oh man, I kind of wanted to get the XL. I was like, but I got the normal 3DS. So eventually I'll get the XL. Well, my normal 3DS was stolen, so I had no choice. And luckily I had enough money after paying bills. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get a 3DS XL because I had to play Castlevania Mirrors of Fate. Had to fucking play that game.
Didn't we all?
So, I mean...
That's another unlucky moment.
So yeah, I went and bought another 3DS, bought 3DS XL, but, I still don't know what happened to that 3DS. I mean... I kind of want to think that maybe because I was moving around the same time too, I kind of want to think that maybe I got it stored away somewhere in my closet, and maybe I'll clean my closet out one day and find my 3DS. And I had one game in there, and it was Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. And what sucks is I'm actually looking at the case right now because I don't even have my 3DS anymore. I sold all my games. And the only thing I have left is this empty case of Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. I'm looking at it right now. I'm thinking about,
it does just leave you. It can always be a moment of, whether you got some kid telling you he's going to, hit you, or you're thinking like somebody I work with, like the place I work, most of my people are older. Like I get mad when somebody takes like a pen. I mean, honestly, if someone takes your pen, they just needed to use it for a moment and they forgot to put it back. Someone takes your game system, and that's something I would be actually like way less worried about, like where I work, someone taking that. I mean, in another moment too, actually. Not as traumatic as the having to go to court and everything and sending away the horrible kid that beat up a deaf kid with a brick. But at my house one time, I'd got a red ring of death on my Xbox, and my nephews had let me borrow theirs. They had other game systems and things to play. They were like, yeah, borrow this. And at that moment, someone broke in my house. And it was so weird, and I still have many questions to this day. A friend of mine had bought a big flat screen TV at the time. They were way more expensive then, but him and his girlfriend had broke up, and he was really worried his girlfriend was just going to come in and break his TV. So we decided to keep it at my house. But the only thing I'm thinking, there was people working on a house next door. I don't know if they saw us moving it in the house, and it was the one day we left the door to the garage open, and someone lifted up the garage door, came in the house. They took the TV, they took the Xbox, which was borrowed, and a laundry basket, I guess, to carry the Xbox in. We called the police, and me and my wife were like, "You got some fingerprints, and is there something? Maybe they touched. Like, this is moved. Can you finger?" And the cop was like, "Like the shit just really doesn't work like that." Like, really? Like, Law and Order's all a lie? So, we do the insurance thing. And, I told my friend about the TV. I had a friend of ours at the time was living with us, because I asked him when he came home, and a little bit later, because we didn't even realize it was gone. And there's kind of circumstances now to some things, and like I still don't think he took it. As things turned out later on, there's maybe like 1% of me that kind of wonders. But I still think some people just saw us, because somebody messed with. No, the thing is, somebody messed with a window, because the screen was taken off one of our back windows. And I guess they just tried the garage. And like I said, I'm just kind of lucky. They came in and just took, the TV, which we gave he was actually more happy to have the money, really, than the TV. I had to replace the Xbox, which, like I said, mine had died. So I didn't get another Xbox. I ended up having to buy another one for my nephews, who were completely cool about it. Even being younger, 12, 13 at the time, were very cool. But, at the time, anytime you get something stolen, it's just like a huge violation, even more so in your house, when you think like somebody was in here. Somebody stole a laundry basket, and we actually counted that on the insurance thing too, which is even just weirder, because I think they were just like, well, you might as well count it. It was stolen. I'm like, what was that? Like $5? I mean, it was a hard wicker, but at the end, those moments, I always feel for anybody that had something stolen, even more so as a kid. It's a little bit easier for us to deal with these things as adults, because we're just kind of used to the world shitting on us as you get older. But like you said, with the innocence of a kid, whether it's someone that they think is a friend, which always happens. And the same thing as you mentioned with like you and Matt, as far as, which games you traded. When my case of games got stolen, I had traded off with 3 friends, So we also had to replace Castlevania 3, Double Dragon 2, and I can't remember what the other one was. But my mom had to pay to, and all the friends were cool. Nobody was like, and nobody's parent was like, oh, right away, you got to pay for it. But I remember my one friend, Jamal, with the Castlevania 3, he was like, hey man, he's like, can I get this other game instead of Castlevania 3? And my mom was like, no, it's like, we kind of just need to go ahead and buy what was stolen, But at the end, all my friends are cool. Friends let me borrow games. They're like, here, take these games, man, because I had, I think I had literally one game. It was a case that held maybe up to 15 games.
Was it like one of those? Was it one of those little like black suitcases?
Yeah, the black kind of fake alligator leather looking
things.
Yeah,
I remember those.
Yeah, 12 to 15 games. It probably
had it had like the gold Nintendo. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So also all my games, like an idiot, I carried them all around that. They were all gone, but like I said, I had some really cool friends that let me borrow games. Like, here, take these. In the meantime, and like I said, at the end, it all worked out. But it was still, just anytime you lose or get something stolen, it just sucks, man. Unlucky.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about my 3DS, because, I worked at the aquarium, and I'm thinking maybe, my bag was somewhere and one of the visitors saw it and grabbed it, and they're, oh shit, it's a 3DS, but
yeah,
I had my 3DS, I had my charger in there, I had it in a case with an extra stylus. I'm like, man, whoever took my fucking 3DS, man, they got the whole shebang. They got a starter kit, and then they got, the digital games I had downloaded and Street Fighter 4. So, man, that pisses me off thinking about it. But
I would definitely recommend to anybody, especially if you plan on keeping a collection. I mean, some people don't want to, do anything to change them, change their games. But I would, I would recommend like instruction booklet. Even if you don't mind like just writing your name on the inside, some kind of distinctive. Plus if you're keeping it anyway, who cares if you do something? Do just like a little slight mark on it, just in case anything gets stolen, so you can maybe find it at a pawn shop or places like that, that people would sell these things to. So at the end, if something bad like that does ever happen, then maybe you have some means of identifying your things and possibly getting your stuff back.
Well, what's cool is, once you have a collection that's worth a certain amount of money, you can put insurance on it.
Yeah,
I've heard of there's a couple of collectors that I've watched on YouTube that's mentioned that they said their collections are insured, in case something was to happen, like someone stole their stuff or a natural disaster happened. I guess they could replace it. Even though if a natural disaster happened, games would be the last thing I'd be thinking about. But I mean, that's one of the things I always get kind of scared about with doing YouTube videos too, man. I mean, someone could find out where you live and like break in your house and steal your collection because you're making videos with a shelf behind you full of games. I mean, that's kind of like, hey, I got over thousands of dollars behind me. What's up? So that's something to really think about. That's kind of scary. It kind of disturbs me a little bit.
Yeah, the world is a more even scarier place now. We have more people with where there's people with drug problems. They're just more shifty people. At the end, be careful. It's always smart. Anybody on YouTube, as we see a lot of people, if they have hey, send me stuff if you want. Which is always cool. I mean, if you got fans, to support creators, which I don't mind, and a lot of them use P.O. boxes.
Yeah, I was gonna say definitely use a P.O. box.
Yeah, always be careful, with your real address. Just be careful with who you associate with, and be careful about what you're, what you talk about, what you're having, and like what you own. It's just always, just be smart. That's all. Have fun and be smart.
Indeed, great advice to live by. Now, I want to go ahead and read some of the comments from our listeners on the podcast. And if you guys want to join our Facebook group community, you can. It's facebook.com/groups/XSgaming Podcast. But I asked them, I was like, share us, some unlucky moments you've had in gaming. Neil, really, really good friend of mine. He's got a YouTube channel called I Will Always Love Video Games. Really cool guy. He says, I don't know if you could count this, but it's more of a game hunting moment that was unlucky. When I started heavy game hunting about 4 years ago, I would always trust my gut. If I was late or didn't have a lot of money on me, I would just say screw it and go home. Well, one night about 2 years ago, I was coming home from late work day, and it was around 7 o'clock on a Thursday, and I passed by Goodwill. My gut told me go in there, while my mind was like, no, it's already 7. Got to get home, get dinner, help the kids, go to bed, so etc., etc. And about 40 minutes later, I get a text message from a friend, and he's like, you won't believe what I found and how much I paid for it. He sends me a picture of a loose copy of Conker's Bad Fur Day, and I asked how much. He said $1. I asked him where he found it. You guessed it, the Goodwill. Now, we have talked about this in previous episodes about that gut feeling on collectors. We've talked about this.
Yeah, it's always that gut feeling. Just the stores you normally go to. A lot of us have that moment of regret. I know what he's saying because, quite a few years ago, like I said, about 4 years ago, the Conker was very easily $80 at least. And to find that, just for $1, I remember passing up, which is still one of my minor regrets. There was a Gargoyle's Quest on the NES, and it was the time when I first started getting NES games, and I think it was about like $20. And I don't even know if I checked. I mean, at the time that was still a good price on it, but I kind of had a price limit on my games, which was $20, and I was just like, I don't know if I want that one, Of course, then I went back the next day, and it was gone, which is usually just a good rule to go ahead and, man, I tell you, if you ever see something and you think you want it, go ahead and pick it up. Yep. If you get a hunch about going in a store, just stop. Now, in the one case, like you said, hey, sometimes, getting home is a priority, getting home, and, if you got kids and stuff. So I think he should cut himself some slack, on that part. He probably did the right thing. But still, there's that part. It's like, I could have just run in there for a minute and found that.
Yeah, I've had plenty of those moments where I've seen a game and I'm like, oh, this is a really good deal. I'll get it next time I visit, and of course it's gone, and I'd be like, man, I should have got it when I did. So I remember we've always said that if you got that gut feeling on a game, just go ahead and buy it. Just go ahead and do it if you can, if you have the means. I mean, don't skip out on your electric bill because you want Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
But John, the Retro Bro, he says, my unlucky moment was on Christmas. My wife had bought me Assassin's Creed 2 for the Xbox 360. The next day, my Xbox Red ringed, and at the time I was too financially stressed to buy a new one, and the current warranty had expired, so I couldn't send it to Microsoft. That sucks. Oh man. Just imagine getting a game that you're really anticipated to get, and you get it and your console doesn't work. That's a terrible feeling.
I had one of those bad Christmas mornings where I got my first CD player, and I remember I had gotten the Metallica Live Shit Binge and Purge box set, and my CD player, and of course, Christmas morning the CD player just didn't work. But part of me was like, you know what? If anybody's going to get one that doesn't work, it's going to be me. I don't know what that says necessarily about me, but at the end, I wasn't too sad.
You're like, I'm the guy that gets threatened with my Nintendo games.
Of course, the CD player isn't going to work. That's just always, especially on Christmas. But at the end, we went back and probably, thanks to my mom, probably who went back the next day or so, and returned it in the midst of Christmas returns and everything was okay.
Now, Chris, BioPhoenix. And the reason why I say these extra names is these, of course, are YouTube contributors as well as listeners to the podcast. So be sure to check out I Will Always Love Video Games, Retro Bro, and BioPhoenix. This is from Chris. He said the first PS4 I got in 2015 with Star Wars decal kept crashing on every game every 20 or 30 seconds, and this started after its 1-year warranty. And I remember that. I'm in a group chat with him on Facebook, and I remember when his first Xbox it went out, and I believe he got, later on, I believe he got the PS4 Pro, and I think he got a different color for it, like a weird color. I can't remember. But yeah, I remember when his PS4 died, that sucks. I mean, I remember I almost thought my PS4 died, and I was freaking out, and I was going online, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I was getting really upset because I was just about to get Yakuza Kiwami, and then I found out it was just my HDMI cord that was plugged in the wrong input, and I was being stupid. I kept going to one channel being like, it's not working, but I had it set up on the other channel. I'm like, oh, well. So, yeah.
Sometimes, at least when it's just something minor like that, it just
definitely
makes it
relieving.
Not so horrible,
Now, getting to some of the gaming industry. I mean, the gaming industry has had a lot of bad luck. I mean, from, Sega leaving the home console market to, the Nintendo Wii U and Virtual Boy. And what I'm going to do is I want to talk 3, good stories about the video game industry. One is probably one of the worst launches in video game history, and that was the North American release of the Sega Saturn. Now, what happened with this was the Sega Saturn, when it was debuted on the 2nd of September 1995, it was even dubbed Saturn Day. And unfortunately, because of the Sony PlayStation, Sega Japan decided to release it 4 months before schedule, just because they were trying to push it before the PlayStation came out. And it actually pissed off a lot of retailers. Pissed off KB Toys, Toys R Us, and they decided some people didn't even decide to support it. And Sega was going through a really tough time at the time because this is back when they had the 32X and the Sega CD. It was just, again, way too much hardware and not enough customers. And I remember that. I remember reading up about how Sega had a problem when it first launched like that.
It just kind of really goes to show what happened, because I can remember, like, a few years later, literally a friend of mine in the neighborhood buying a set, like a brown grocery bag with a Saturn and maybe 6 games. I bought for him for $30 because I ended up selling it to my brother EJ later on. I was trying to sell it to him for the same I bought it for, which I guess at the time I thought was $50, and I think he had told me I had told him earlier, but I ended up actually buying this for $35. Sold it for $50, so like I still made some money, but my friend and his brothers were just trying to get money, I think, to get another PlayStation. Like, they were kind of burnt. I guess they felt burnt, like, oh, we got the Saturn, we shouldn't have got this. And I was like, man, it was like $30. And I mean, that Saturn was the one that passed around from, it went from me to EJ, and I don't know if that was one that went, back. I don't know if you had it at one time. This thing jumped around like a whole lot, and it finally ended up passing away. But it, just goes to show you during a time, man. And this was probably within 96, I think, when I initially bought it. $35 for a Saturn and 5 to 6 games. Like, that
is a good deal right there. Staying on top of Sega, another really unlucky moment for Sega, weirdly enough, is apparently the Game Gear. The Game Gear did not sell well, and why did it flop? It had terrible battery life. It required 6 AA batteries and lasted for around like 3 to 5 hours, where the Game Boy only required 4, and it lasted for about 10 to 12 hours. It was an expensive handheld. It was like $150, and it was an oversized console, making it difficult to carry around. There were too many accessories, and the Game Gear had like Master System games ported over, but they suffered from screen crunch, making it hard to see where you were going. The screen had some blurry artifacts to it, and many units were manufactured with faulty parts, causing them to have poor video quality or sound, and this could be fixed by replacing the broken pieces afterwards. And it also says, in attempt to make itself look cooler than the Game Boy by mocking the Game Boy's colorless screen, yet the Game Boy was a huge success while the Game Gear failed. When the Game Boy Color was released, that sold better than the Game Gear. The commercial for the Game Gear featured a dead squirrel. That was one of the lists. I remember that commercial. It had, I believe it had the fat kid from Salute Your Shorts, Donkey Lips. I think that
Donkey Lips.
I think it was Donkey Lips. He was sitting there playing Super Mario Land, and there was like a squirrel, and it was like a really dead squirrel because it was like stiff with rigor mortis. And he picked it up by the tail, and he hit himself in the head. And like he was like seeing different colors, like ooh, colors, and kept playing the Game Boy.
I'm just like I'm sorry, but as you could say, maybe as bad or lower quality as the graphics were on the Game Boy, man, it definitely had the a good standard of games that were fun, and it worked for what they had. I tend to I didn't really care about the Game Gear. I think when it first came out, it was wow. But a little bit later, you kind of hear about things. You're like, man, the Game Boy is so good. Like, I don't really know if those colors can compete with this. To whereas now, I look back on the Game Gear a little bit more fondly. I think they might have ran into some, issues as far as licensing. Kind of like Nintendo really garnered the market on a lot of licenses. They had the Final Fantasies, so many things on the Game Boy. And Sega had all their franchises still. And I do enjoy playing it. I really love how they had that adapter to where you could actually play, full-on Master System games, on the Game Gear, which I use to this day. sometimes, like, if I'm not going to play it on a Pi or for some reason I want to, use my Game Gear, I've been known to like throw a Master System game in there. So I actually like the Game Gear a bit more now than I did then, but at that time it just couldn't compete. Nintendo knew what they were doing with that pea-colored screen, but man, they had the games that really stood up and really stood the test of time. To where granted, a lot of games from both systems are on the 3DS eShop now, which is just awesome too. That you can play Game Gear games on a Nintendo console, as we see much of that crossover nowadays.
Yeah. There was, the funny thing is like, I got a Game Gear a couple of years ago. I don't have it anymore, but I got the Game Gear way after it had been out. It had already been out for forever, and I got it and I played it, and I'm like, it still had that little bit of a charm to it. I mean, I noticed that I had to kind of hold the Game Gear up a little bit because the screen was starting to like kind of bleed over. And I believe that's a common thing with Game Gears. And a lot of people get them modded now with like LED screens, and they look really good. But
a mod in there would really make things. If a Game Gear is something you're looking to get into, I would highly recommend that, because I've gotten a couple over time to where like I bought one, and I remember like it was when I debated. It was at a used store here, and I decided to go ahead and pick it up. It had a warranty and everything on it for like 30 days. And I've kind of Frankensteined it as far as, it was missing the back battery covers, and I ended up getting another one. So I took the battery covers from it, and then, I'd give the other one. I don't even know who ended up with my other one. Like one had a better picture, one had no sound. I just kind of ended up taking the best one overall. But yeah, if you can get like a backlit screen and it's something you want to maybe invest a little bit of money into, a lot of the Game Gear games are really cheap. And,
I was about to say, it's a pretty cheap thing to collect for. Yeah,
it's still a really fun system. You can find your like, random. Like I found a wrestling game. I can't think of what it was. A WWF game. But I never even knew they had one on Game Gear, and I just went to my little local used stores. I just happened to find it for a couple bucks, and I was like, I gotta get this. And I mean, it kind of sucks, playing it. It's more one of the versions of like the old, like LGN ones that came out on the Super NES and Genesis, which were not bad. But I mean, this particular Game Gear one is kind of bad. But I mean, I still find really cool games, ones you might have never even known about. And lots of crap you don't want to play, but there's also really good things too. So, but if it's something you think you might want to invest in, a backlit screen, maybe something on a mod. If you can't do it yourself, I'm sure there's many people out there, that can maybe do it for not too much money. And I still think about it myself sometimes, just to have a little bit better screen, because and that Game Boy monochrome screen sure stood the test of time, but those Game Gear ones do not.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I just looked at the time. We're actually running short on time. So I was going to get into is games we've been playing, because I've actually been playing quite a bit lately. But before that, I'm going to pass it over to you, James. What have you been playing recently?
Well, one of my favorite things recently, I know I told you about it, as I mentioned in the last episode, I got the Retrocade. It had a lot of arcade games on it, and I hadn't played with it the most, but I was flipping through it the other day, and just kind of going in order. I put on a filter for arcade games only, which is definitely a big interest of mine, and I found this game called Boogie Wings. It just sounded interesting. It's a Data East game, and I popped it on, started to play it, and you were a biplane. It's kind of got that old Red Baron look to it, and you have a kind of like a hook hanging underneath your plane. And you start off with a bomb, and you can kind of, more like using the centrifugal force of flying your plane. You can move your hook, and you can throw the bomb. And once you throw the bomb, this hook is open, and you can pick up tanks. You can pick up a good majority of things that are just on the ground, other bombs, which you can just throw around. And when your plane blows up, which happens, this is kind of like your, 2D kind of like shoot 'em up game. You fall out of the plane and you're running around. and you're shooting and you're jumping, and it kind of turns into a run and gun.
Oh wow!
Now, after you're shooting and jumping, there are things like horses, which you can pick up and throw with your plane. But there's horses, there's pogo sticks, all kinds of things on the ground that you can get on. I mean, this game, it quickly became one of my favorite shoot 'em ups. With having never played it before, just really imaginative. Kind of makes you think a little bit of Metal Slug, made me think a little bit about Choplifter, a little bit of Parodius, many things mixed in. Just a blast, man. There's one level that was like all Christmas. It's a little bit after Christmas, but I was still kind of in the mood. You fight a gigantic Santa, who's like, "Merry Christmas, ho ho." At the end, you gotta blow him up. There's one stage that's kind of inspired by Coney Island. You have a Ferris wheel you can like shoot, and it's like bouncing around the stage.
Oh wow!
Of course, one of my favorite things with theme parks is such a carousel. Yeah, I know it's kind of weak, but I really like carousels, man. They're cool. But yeah, Boogie Wings, a Data East game that it's not been released on anything. I really could picture it being on the Saturn, but it's not. It would have been cool if it was on the Data East collection, but it also is not. But we have many means like emulation, and if you just want a really fun shoot 'em up, I know I told you all about it because I was really excited. It's like it doesn't happen a whole lot, and that's one of the really fun things with arcade games to me. There's many ones I missed, or I might have played once and forgot about. But Boogie Wings is one that has definitely jumped to the top of my list. That really enjoying playing, and of course I got unlimited continues on it, so I'm definitely going to keep going with that one. On the Switch, still getting lots of eShop games. I've got this one, I haven't played it yet, but it was called Stick Bold, and it has something to do with dodgeball, which I'm always a big fan of.
Yeah. I've seen footage of that game. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was one I just decided to take a chance on. Still playing some on Epic, which has been a really like a favorite Metroidvania style game. I mentioned it before on the last show. It was a one-man developer team, lots of items. It just, man, for being a more simple type of game like that, it really kind of captures what I enjoy about those, is finding like the new weapons, exploration, the enemies, the areas, and it was on sale, and it's one every time I play it, I really enjoy it. And sometimes I was like, man, maybe I should have saved, because I'll get to a point and I was like, I don't know if I saved or not, because it'll have some automatic saving, but then part of me is like, well, it's like I don't really mind playing it again. But as far as like that Metroidvania style game, a little bit simpler, but it's one that really kind of it just kind of really kind of nailed the heart of what those games are, and I've really enjoyed that one. Letter Quest, another game I got on the Switch. I love Word Jung. What was that old Bookworm? Games like that where you have the set of letters and you spell words. I've always loved those. And Letter Quest, much like some of the later versions of Bookworm, it kind of mixes RPG element, in with the spelling, as far as like, you'll have your battle and, you spell a big enough word, to get the amount of hit points to attack your enemy. Definitely a fun one. I'm sure this has been on like other systems, and I think this is like it's probably like a Letter Quest like DX or something, where it has all the upgrades. Definitely a fun one. And another one I was really surprised to see. I'd gone to the store to actually, when I picked up, because I'd sent you the code for an eShop card for Christmas, just to like I said, buy some crap or whatever you want, just blow it.
Yeah.
And when I went to GameStop to get it, I actually ended up finding, because I always will check the Switch section, and as recently we had Pinball Effects come out, which I picked up. It's got a lot of tables to get, but a lot of times we'll get one pinball game, we'll get another, and there was a Stern Pinball collection, which actually came out on a physical copy, which is on the eShop too, but same price. I'm going to go ahead and snag up the physical, and the Stern Pinball collection. Really cool. It's you speaking of Last Action Hero earlier. That actually is one of the tables on there. It's got an AC/DC table. It's got about 11 tables on there. A Harley Davidson, a really good mix of movies, music, and some pop culture and some original ones. And I've really enjoyed that. I'm a huge fan of pinball in general, but especially on the home systems too. I think they've done a really good job, over the past few, especially since the PS3. With remaking a lot of these classic tables, whether it's Twilight Zone, Elvira, so many collections, so many of these tables are available, whether it's through Pinball Effects, or these Stern collections. If you like pinball and you haven't tried out, any of these ones, I'd really suggest you do. I think they, nothing can quite capture that feeling of a full-on pinball machine, but I think they do as close as you can as far as a digital format. But it was $40 for like 11 tables. Like I said, it's for download. Same with many others. I'm looking forward to getting the Jaws table, as that is one of my favorite movies, and that one's on the Pinball Effects with the Spielberg collection. I think it's E.T., Back to the Future, and Jaws. But there's lots of them out there. So like if you're into pinball, and you got to check these out, because it's just really about the only way to play a lot of these games, other than buying an expensive ass table, which I'm sure none of us can afford. But if you can, more power to you. But that's been about the big chunk. And one thing too, I did want to bring up, as we said with the snowstorm, there was a pay-per-view recently for New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 12, which is like their WrestleMania. I did not have to work on Thursday. And I woke up at 3 a.m. to watch Japanese wrestling, which is something I will fondly remember doing. It was just cool. I only dozed off once or twice. And a little bit prior to that, we'd heard an announcement that New Japan was going to be talking about a video game. A lot of speculation at the time. Would it be a new one? They haven't had one since the Wrestle Kingdom game that was on the 360, I think, and the PS2. So that kind of tells you how old that game is. We didn't get anything on the PS3, at the PS4, and the New Japan game on 360 is one of the ones we cannot play here in America. It is region locked, per game. So we were thinking, could this be a New Japan game? But what it is, it was more of a partnership with Fire Pro World, which has been out on Steam. It's coming out in, I believe it's going to be the first quarter of this year. Finally will be on PS4, but they did an official partnership with New Japan. So along with the mixture of characters that are real wrestlers but have different names and costumes, there's lots of downloads, very, very highly on the fan oriented as far as people making wrestlers and things like that. So you can get any wrestler you want, but they did an official New Japan partnership, which I think is really cool. So all those wrestlers will officially be on Fire Pro, which is just awesome. Okada, Suzuki, you'll have Kenny Omega, with the awesome match between Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho, which I'll talk about just for a moment, which I think was an awesome moment in wrestling, because Chris Jericho, who not officially under WWE contract, is still known for being a WWE wrestler and one of the last great wrestlers that has wrestled all over the world. And, he chose to go to New Japan to wrestle Kenny Omega, and it's just an awesome, almost 30-minute brawl, tables, chairs, blood. Highly suggest checking it out. He's actually hanging around New Japan as he attacked Naito at the New Year's Dash the next night. It's kind of like their after Mania Raw. And so he's going to be there, for a little bit in between Fozzy tours, of course. But it's brought a lot of new eyes to New Japan. They had thousands of subscribers to New Japan World, which is like WWE Network. $10 a month. You get any pay-per-views, specials. It's very English friendly. They have an English version of the site. They actually have an English commentary team on many of the major shows. So, if you're into wrestling, it's something to check out. But, New Japan's very hot as far as, like I said, the Fire Pro World partnership. They've had some appearances in Tekken 7 as far as, New Japan clothing, Bullet Club. They're going to be in Yakuza 6. There is a whole gang of New Japan wrestlers, which I think is just insane. So, I mean, New Japan is making its presence known. They're really trying to jump in on the American market. They're opening a new, dojo or training school. We're going to have more shows over here. Me as a huge wrestling fan, it's just very exciting. And maybe if you were a wrestling fan in the past and you don't really care about WWE, I would say check out New Japan. And I think it's brought a lot of people back into it. Their logo is New Japan, King of Sports. It is treated like a sport. Over there, it's taken a little bit more serious. And if you're just, hardcore wrestling fan, check it out. They have lots of partnerships with Ring of Honor, which is another really big, one of the biggest indie organizations over here. And I mean, that's one of the things in 2018 I'm really looking forward to. It's just all the New Japan stuff. And I will remember getting up at 3 a.m. to watch that. And it was an awesome show.
That's awesome. Now, what have I been playing recently? Well, I'll start first with the eShop card you gave me. I bought a couple of games. I bought Blossom Tale, which is a game.
How is that? I bought that too. I haven't played it yet.
It's really good. I haven't played a whole lot into it. I watched Amanda do a live stream of it on her channel, and
kind of Zelda-ish.
Yeah, it's totally Zelda-ish. Like it's almost like, okay, you have inspirations and you kind of have rip-offs, and this one kind of rips off Link to the Past, but if you love Link to the Past, it wouldn't matter. You're just like, yeah, it's a lot like Link to the Past, but it's good. What I like about it, though, is like the game is pretty much about this old man telling his grandchildren the story that you're playing. And it's kind of cool because sometimes like something happens in the game and the grandpa will come out of nowhere and be like, and this is the moment our hero when she did this. And then the kids like interrupt and try to change things that happen in the story that affects the game. I thought that was kind of cool. I think that's really cool. So I've been playing that. I also got this really interesting game called The Last Penelope. And what this is like a racer, like a top-down racer, kind of like a slot car racing game mixed with a bullet hell. It's like if you were to take a bullet hell and play RC Pro-Am. It's really interesting. I had a lot of fun playing it, but at the same time the controls are just really freaking weird. But it was a good game. I've been playing that. Also, I got a review code for this game called Energy Invasion, and I'm not supposed to be talking about it because it's not out yet, but by the time this podcast comes out, it will be out, so I can talk about it. It's pretty much a new take on Breakout, if you guys are familiar with Breakout.
That's always fun.
Yeah, it's fun, and what's cool about it is like the ball. Okay, so you got the paddle. The paddle hits the ball's hitting the blocks. But when the ball's hitting the blocks, you can also shoot missiles out of the ball while it's in the air. So you're shooting blocks while the ball is freely bouncing around the screen. And then there's other ships that come out of nowhere that try to shoot you down while you're doing that. So there's a lot of eye coordination to this game. Like this is like one of those old school Atari games in 2018. And the company, the developers behind it, they're called Something. That's what they're called. They're called Something. And they've been doing a really good job about that. So I'm going to be doing an official review on that very soon. Also, I got a review code from Digerati, and they sent me a copy of Albert and Otto. And that game, by the time this podcast is out, is already out, so the embargo's lifted, and I can talk about it. Albert and Otto is very much like Limbo. It plays and looks a lot like Limbo, but there are some key elements to it that makes it a little different. I would say this is more puzzle oriented, a little more action oriented, and the puzzles are just like really, really thought out. Like there's some puzzles that took me a while. I was like, how the hell do I beat this? And I would like go outside and take a smoke and come back in and go back at it. But I'm gonna be doing a full review of that as well. And that was a lot of fun. There was also this other game. I'm trying to remember the name of it. That was on the Switch. It's a little beat 'em up. Let me see if I can look it up real quick. It's a beat 'em up game on the Switch, and it's like called like
with like the Japanese girls or something.
No, it's like Meanie something with these like it's a like a real like cutie looking beat 'em up that I bought with the eShop card as well. That I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get this as well. You know what? My Switch is right here. I'll just go ahead and turn on my Switch real quick because I cannot remember the name of it. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's Energy Invasion playing real quick, folks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's called Square Boy versus the Bullies Arena Edition. And I haven't played too much of it. I saw that Amanda was playing it, and she's sent me some screenshots of it and some little videos of it. I was like, man, this is kind of like a little adorable little game. I like how he kicks his little feet. He's like this little... He looks like a fighting chicken nugget. This is cool. It was like $5. It was on sale, so I was like, why not? Dude, the eShop is just full of those like games that just... They're cheap, and you just find yourself buying them. You know, that's what I really like about that console. But that's what I've been playing. Even though I haven't played Square Boy yet, I'm planning on playing that. But also, as of recording this, I had already done my live stream of this. But I'm doing a live stream Saturday of a fan-made homebrew Mario game. And it's called Mario is Missing Done Right. And James, I'll have to send you the ROM to this because you can play it on your Pi. Someone took Super Mario World and took the coding and made a completely new game featuring Luigi saving Mario. And this feels like a Super Nintendo game that was just discovered. Like, it legit feels like a new game. And I've been playing that, and, dude, it's so fun. There's even a stage that you're in the forest, and it plays Zelda music for the background music. And I was like, this is cool. Like, they use a lot of the same Mario soundtracks, but they've actually remixed them. Like, there's like the Mario World Castle theme, but it's actually like done a little differently, and they've added different arrangements to it. Whoever made this fan-made game, like, they made this out of pure passion. And so I've been playing that today, actually. I was playing it on my Pi, and then I was playing a little bit on my PC. And I'm planning on live streaming it.
I'm one who like doesn't necessarily even hate the original Mario is Missing. You know, it's kind of sometimes I enjoy those, the time machine and such. I kind of like the little history element of those, but playing something like that, you know, that a fan did is probably a little bit more geared to what we would have expected to be as kids. You know, would probably be really awesome.
Oh, speaking about an unlucky moment, that game right there was an unlucky moment. I remember playing hooky. Because I wanted to get Mario is Missing at Blockbuster. I played hooky. I was like, oh, I'm so sick.
Should have gone to school, man.
Yeah, I went to, and it was so ironic that I played hooky to go to school. I mean, to go to Blockbuster, rent a game that ended up being an educational game. But I had no idea. I mean, when you look on the back of it, it looks like a Mario game when you look on the back of it, you know, but... Yeah,
you know, renting games in itself is just lots of times an unlucky moment. Whether it was X-Men, Baby Boomer, it was just it was filled up. But hey, at least you got to take those back. You know, you didn't buy them.
And then we go back and play those games on emulation just to have nostalgia. At least that's what I do. I'll go back and play a game I absolutely hated just to be like, oh man, I remember hating this game.
I might would play X-Men again. I don't know if I will ever play Baby. Well, granted, though, I am a big fan of like light gun games. Of course, granted, again with that one too, I'd probably have to actually get the cartridge to play that, you know, on a CRT. I don't want to play that game. It's not worth the trouble. Fuck it.
But anyway, guys, this concludes another episode of XSgaming Podcast. And again, if you guys have any unlucky stories, be sure to leave a comment on our YouTube page that's up on right now. And if you're listening to us on Podomatic or on iTunes, check out my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Xander Skullion, where I'll be uploading different reviews, and I'll be doing some live streams soon, different stories. Like I put up an Arcade Memories video not too long ago. Also, I brought back games you should check out, where I talk about games that I recommend, and I even have recommendations from other content creators where they have to describe a game in at least a minute with our 1 minute crunch. Really, really cool stuff. And every Sunday, every Wednesday is a new upload on my channel, so be sure to check that out. Anyway, guys, as always, thanks for listening, and as always, happy gaming.
Suzuki-gun, Ichiban. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.